Well, howdy, boys and girls. Welcome to the train station. As you can see, we're getting the locomotive all ready for our polar run. Hey, I hear that you going to see or have seen that movie, Polar Express. Well, do you know the Polar Express was made from a book? That's right, this book right here. Lots of movies are made from books. I love books. I read books all the time. I'll read a book about a movie before I go see the movie. That's right. Well, this book was made by a man named Van Allsburg. He just was born over there in Grand Rapids, the other side of the state. Well, he grew up and got married and had two beautiful little girls. But he never had a son, never had a boy to grow up with and play with. And that kind of made him sad. So he decided to write a book about a boy. And it had to have a train. All boys like trains. Well, this book's about a boy who thought it may not be no Santa Claus. Imagine, he may have started thinking that there was no Santa Claus. And he finds out how there really is a Santa Claus. So I'm going to tell you my story, the story of the Polar Express. I want you to listen up as I say it. Are you ready? Here we go. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I laid in my bed quietly. I breathed real slow. I didn't even rustle the sheets because I was listening for a sound a friend of mine had said I'd never hear, the sound of bells, of sleigh bells from Santa's sleigh. There ain't no Santa Claus, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Later that night, I did hear sounds, but they weren't of ringing bells. The sounds I heard were of clanking metal and hissing steam, and they were coming from outside my window. Well, I jumped out of bed, ran up to the window, and looked outside. And there, standing perfectly still on the street below, was a train, an old steam train. Snowflakes were falling lightly all around it. Steam was coming out from underneath it. And there, down the train, standing by one of the open doors of the coach, was the conductor. He was looking at his pocket watch. Well, then he looked up at the window and he saw me. And he yells, "All aboard!" All aboard? Well, I threw on my bathrobe and put on my slippers, tiptoed downstairs out the door. I didn't want to wake my parents. And ran right up to him. And he looked down at me and he said, "Well, are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course. This is the Polar Express." The Polar Express? The Polar Express. He took my outstretched hand and he pulled me aboard. And when I got inside the train, it was filled with other children. The girls were in their nightgowns, the boys in their pajamas. And I sat down with them. Then all of a sudden, the train gave a lurch and started moving. So we all gathered together and sang Christmas songs. Ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. Outside the windows, the lights of towns flickered by as the Polar Express went faster and faster northward. Soon there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forest where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train. We went up mountains so high, I thought we'd scrape the moon. But the Polar Express went faster and faster northward. We went up peaks and down through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. But the Polar Express went faster and faster northward. We went over a great barren desert of ice, the polar ice cap. After a while, one of the girls yelled out and was looking in the window. She said, "Look, lights! I see lights!" They looked like lights of a strange ocean liner on a frozen sea. The conductor come up and said, "That's the North Pole." The North Pole? The North Pole. It sit on the top of the world. But as we entered the city, we saw factories of every kind, where every toy was ever made. And as we came in, we didn't see no elves. "Where's all the elves?" we cried. "Where's all the elves?" The conductor said, "They're gathering at the center of the city. That's where the first gift will be given." "The first gift?" we all cried. "Who gets the first gift?" The conductor said, "He will choose one of you." Wow, to be chosen? To get the first gift? Wow. Just then a boy yells out, he's looking out the window. He said, "Look, elves, I see elves." Hundreds of elves we saw. Why, there were so many elves, the Polar Express had to slow to a crawl. When it could go no further, it stopped. Well, the conductor, he let us all off the train. And we pushed our way through the crowd of elves to where there was a large open circle. In the middle of that circle sat Santa's sleigh. The reindeers were already hooked up. They pranced and they paced and they bounced around so much it made the bells on their harnesses ring. And it was the most beautiful sound I ever heard. But just then, on the other side of the circle, you could see the elves were parting. And who should appear but Santa Claus? Santa Claus appeared, and all the elves were cheering wildly. Well, Santa started marching over to his sleigh, and then he spotted us. And he marched right over to us. And looking down at each one of us, stopped in front of me. Santa picked me. He said, "Let's have this fellow here." Santa picked me to get the first gift of Christmas. Well, Santa jumped up in his sleigh, and the conductor handed me up to him. And I got to sit on Santa's knee. Well, Santa, he looked down and smiled at me. He said, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" Imagine Santa himself asking me what I wanted for Christmas. I knew I could ask for anything I could imagine. Any toy I ever wanted, I could ask for. But I thought about it a minute. And I whispered into his ear, "All I want for Christmas is one magic bell from Santa's sleigh." Well, old Santa, he laughed, that big barrel laugh he has. And he turned to an elf and he yelled out to him, "Cut me a bell off my harness." Well, the elf, he cut the bell off and he tossed it up to Santa. Santa held it high above his head and yelled out, "The first gift of Christmas." And everybody started cheering. But somewhere on the other side of town, a clock, it was striking midnight. Ooh, that was the time for Santa to go. He had to leave. He had to go. Deliver the presents to all the other boys and girls. He had to leave. So Santa, he handed me my bell. And I put it in my bathrobe pocket. Then he handed me down to the conductor. And Santa turned to his reindeers. And he yelled out the reindeers' names: On, Dasher and Dancer, Comet and Cupid, Donner and Blitzen. He cracked his whip above their heads, and they all jumped and started pulling the sleigh. Slowly the sleigh climbed up into the sky and circled our heads above, once, then twice, and poof, he was gone. He was on his way to deliver the presents. He was gone. Well, the conductor, he took us all, put us back on the train. And when I sat down, all the other children come running up to me and said, "Let's see the bell. Let's see the bell." I reached into my bathrobe pocket to get the bell, but all I felt was a hole. I lost the bell. The magic bell from Santa's sleigh. I lost it. One of the boys yelled out, "Well, let's go look for it." But before we could jump, the train jumped and started moving. We were on our way home. It was too late to look for the bell. It broke my heart to lose that bell. When the train finally got to my house, I sadly left them other children. I watched the train leave, and the conductor on the train, he yelled something to me, but I couldn't hear him. I said, "What?" The conductor put his hands by his mouth and he yelled out, "Merry Christmas." The Polar Express gave out two toots and it was gone. It disappeared into the mist. The next morning, Christmas morning, this happened all overnight. My sister Sarah and I, we opened all our presents. Ain't that a lot of fun, boys and girls? Opening presents, ripping the paper off the box, don't know what's inside, but I want to find out. You're laughing even before you see it. Well, when Sarah and I thought we had opened all our presents, she found one more small box under the tree. She took it out. It was addressed to me. I hurried up and opened up the box. Inside the box was a note. I took the note out and read it. It said, "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." Old Santa Claus himself. I took the bell out and I put it up by my head and I shook it. And it made the most beautiful sound my sister Sarah and I had ever heard. But my mama, standing behind me, she said, "Oh, that's too bad." My papa, he said, "Yep, it's broken." For when I had shaken the bell, they did not hear its sweet sound. At one time, all my friends could hear the bell. But over the years, it slowly fell silent to all of them. Even my sister Sarah, sweet Sarah, one Christmas morning, could no longer hear the bell. But as for me, boys and girls, even though I'm getting old, this bell still rings for me. And it'll always ring those who truly believe. That's the end of the book. Now, boys and girls, you know, Santa and the reindeer, they work awful hard that one night delivering all the presents. When they get back, the elves take care of the sleigh and take care of the reindeer, wipe them down, and to remove the harnesses. Well, the harnesses get all worn out, and they have to put new ones on them for the next year. Well, an elf asked Santa a long time ago, "What are we going to do with all these old bells?" Well, Santa thought about it a minute, and he says, he says, "I got all these Polar Express conductors now. Why don't we give them the bells? And we can make sure all children get special bells." Get a good sounding one. There we go. So you all take care now. Remember, believe.